and timing and things that matter and experience and range and all these things that I've always been told. I've thought that. I'm starting to change my opinion. If anybody as an insider, and nobody's more inside in boxing than the former heavyweight champion of the world, Lennox Lewis, doesn't completely dismiss a guy who's never done it, who's about to take on the greatest, most decorated athlete your entire sport has ever produced in the history of ever, and you're giving the kid a chance, your sport sucks.
I think you've nailed that point over and over and over the last several weeks, and I haven't really been listening to you because I think you're wrong. I think you're absolutely wrong. We had Mike Perry on the show, and you asked him that question, and he said, sometimes I go with the high-level boxers, and sometimes I do real good, but sometimes their footwork just gets me going backwards. I don't know what I'm doing. And as soon as he said that, I was like, yeah, of course, because they were carrying you the other times. I disagree with you 100%. I agree with you in terms of why isn't everybody coming out and saying this is insanity, which it should be. Mayweather's not going to knock him out in the first or second round. Mayweather's going to gas him out, not take a punch in the first 3 rounds, and then he's going to pick him apart and embarrass him, and it's going to be ugly. Or Connor's gonna get disqualified. I've said this a few times.
What part did you disagree? I was confused on what part you disagreed with me on. You disagreed with me, but where are you disagreeing with me?
I disagree with the fact that boxing isn't a sport. Boxing is a sport.
Okay, well, let me weigh in on that, though, because I'm on the side that boxing is a sport. I'm on the side
But you just said you're starting to believe it's not.
Well, it's one way or the other, and they're making me believe this. They're making me believe there's no Santa Claus. I am stunned with the fact that an insider will not defend tooth and nail his own sport to a guy coming over to it that's never done it before. I am stunned by that. So what I'm saying is it's one way or the other, and we're going to find out on the fight night. Your analysis just said you think it sucks. If you think that Floyd is going to go a few rounds with Conor before he picks him apart, that means boxing sucks. Because you've got the greatest to have ever done it against a guy who has never done it. So, what are you saying, Joel? I mean, pick a side here. If you're saying you think it goes a few rounds by strategy of Floyd Mayweather, that's a cop-out. You're giving a cop-out to Floyd that he goes a few rounds. Go back to my David Taylor example. If this were a wrestling match, the best that we have right now with David Taylor, that's just in the country, not even the world, and that we've ever seen. The best that we have in the country right now, so I'll put David Taylor forward, against a guy that's never done it, and you're going to give an analysis as a wrestler, you're going to come on and go, yeah, well, I think what David Taylor's going to do is he's going to wear him down before he picks him apart. David Taylor doesn't do a goddamn thing. It doesn't matter who's in better shape, who's in anything. David Taylor's going to take that guy down. He's going to turn him every way, which way but lose. It's going to be 13 seconds long. Everybody's going to get up and go home. 100% of the time, 10 out of 10, 100 out of 100, that match is less than 15 seconds. And when I normally tell this story, I go, well, it'd be less than 30 seconds. But that's to buy myself some time. That match is 30 seconds long. If I told you in any other sport, I'm going to bring in a really good athlete, but he's never played basketball, but he's a good athlete, and he's going to play LeBron James. And if somebody had to give me a breakdown and go, well, I think, here's what LeBron's going to do. I think he's going to kind of wear the guy down. I think he's going to size him up. He's going to kind of see what he can do from the three-point line, let him get inside a little bit, and then LeBron's going to put a game plan together. Come that second, third quarter, oh, man, LeBron's going to blow this thing open. Then you just disrespected LeBron, and you just disrespected the entire sport of basketball, which does not date as far back, even close by hundreds of years, to as far back as the sport of boxing.
All right, so what you're saying is if Mayweather doesn't take a punch, doesn't get hit one single time, and pieces him up for 3 or 4 rounds and then takes him out, then boxing's embarrassment. I don't agree with you.
How do you not? But compared to the David Taylor example I just gave you, or the LeBron example I just gave you, why would somebody that's a good athlete, let's acknowledge they're a really good athlete, but they've never played basketball, be able to make it into the third quarter with LeBron James, or whatever the rules are for one-on-one in basketball? Why would that ever happen? What other sport can you compare it to? I'm going to take a really great athlete and I'm going to put him against Serena Williams. Well, they're kind of big, and Serena's got to wear him down. She's got to size him up a little bit before she's definitely going to win the game. But you just disrespected tennis and Serena. It's either real or it's not. And she goes out there and she knocks the balls against this person that's literally never done it for. And you can talk about they're a great athlete. They trained really hard for 8 months. She's been doing it her whole life at a high level. She's been at the top of the game for 14 years versus somebody who's done it for 9 months in the gym. It's like, look, you're either disrespecting her or you're not, and you're disrespecting the entire industry. So if somebody wants to come forward, and if this happens the way you're saying it, and a lot of people, and you're a smart guy, you know the sport, you know what you're talking about, that's how you see it ahead of time. If that plays out and you act like that's anything but an absolute overwhelming win by Conor, if Conor can go out there and get into the 5th and 6th round, Sean Bay Mitchell's a former world champion in boxing, and he got stopped in the 5th round by Floyd Mayweather. So if you're telling me that Conor McGregor, who's never even done the sport before, is likely to make it into the 5th round, then you don't respect boxing. Period. Period.
That's your opinion. I disagree with you. I think that
Michael Spinks won a gold medal in a world championship, and he made it 91 seconds against Mike Tyson. So
okay,
what the hell is this whole we got to feel this thing out process with everybody?
Roy Jones Jr. said, yeah, I'm not in a big hurry to fight you because MMA fighters throw punches at a different angle. It's going to take Floyd a minute to figure this thing out. That's all I'm saying. And at the end of the day, who's got the bigger risk here?
Then how is that not a win for Conor? Or will you concede to that point? If it does take Floyd a while to figure it out, each minute that Conor's out there is a win for Conor. Do you give me that point? Or am I alone on that one too?
I mean, okay. I'll give you that.
And would you give me that no other sport would work that way? Now, I don't care how scary he is of the punches. LeBron doesn't need to be worried about somebody having some weird layup because they've never done it before and he hasn't seen it before. And Serena doesn't have to worry about somebody's, crazy overhand because they've never done it before and it's a little unorthodox.
Yeah,
in
Ben Askren doesn't have to worry about GSP's double.
Okay, in any other sport, it doesn't matter. You bring in the king, he squashes somebody.
Like Randy squashed Tony.
I mean, yes or no? It has to work that way. In any minute that it doesn't, my goodness, Michael Spinks, an Olympic champion, a world champion, made it 91 seconds. Mike Tyson needed to wear him down and move around. Oh, feel like these punches. The guy's got this huge reach. Oh, this was a little bit weird. Man, you've either got a skill or you don't.
God,
you can either
I hope
step
you're right
in
on this.
and measure a guy and put him down, or you can't. And if you're the greatest of all time, taking a guy that's never done it and he makes it into the 5th round, your sport sucks.
You know what?
And I don't want to believe boxing says. I think that
I want you to be right.
Joel, I think in some ways when I say this, your response then it presents it as though I'm bagging on boxing. I am an amateur boxer. I love and respect the sport of boxing. It's making me question because I also respect Lennox Lewis's opinion. I respect Freddie Roach's opinion. I respect Oscar De La Hoya's opinion. And when those 3 guys that I hold in a high regard in that field come out and they don't overwhelmingly just dismiss this and go, man, this is a joke, but let's enjoy the show. Let's have some fun with this thing and throw our money down. But my God, this is over before it begins. The walkout's going to be longer than the match. When they don't come out and say things like that, it does make me start to question, wait a minute, have I been lied to all these years? Is boxing not a real sport? And then I talk to you. I respect your opinion, and you're telling me right now on the air that this is likely to go into the 5th round. Sean Bay Mitchell only made it to the 5th round. Sean Bay Mitchell is a world boxing champion.
I don't want to, what's it called, ducktail on this. I hope you're right. I think there's a way we can both be right. I believe if Mayweather wanted to take him out in the very first round, he could? Yes. I do not think he's going to do that for several reasons. One is then he's got to go out and be aggressive, and he opens it up to catching a lucky punch. That's not how Mayweather fights. So if you think Mayweather's going to change the way he fights just because he's fighting somebody else, I think you're wrong. On this one, I hope you're right. I hope you're right. It doesn't diminish the fact that I'm going to be rooting for Conor. I hope you're right because you make a great point.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I did just want to set the record straight there because I thought that after I got done with that rant, by your response, you thought that somehow I was kicking boxing. I'm actually on the other side of it where I think this fight is 30 seconds, but I'm also on the side of it where I'm saying it had better be. this had better be 30 seconds. If you're the greatest of all time and you've never lost a professional boxing, you're taking on a guy who has never done professional boxing, that had damn sure better be over instantly. It really does need to be.
Paying attention's hard.
Yeah, and even when I, talk about the Shambe Mitchell, it's a perfect example where Floyd went out there, he took him apart, and he put him away. The guy's a former world champion. And, I'm hearing people now try to make excuses for Floyd, and you just did it too, where he's going to go out and take that lucky punch. There are no lucky punches in boxing. Okay, that does happen in MMA with a 4-ounce glove. There is no such thing as a lucky punch in boxing where they've got 16-ounce gloves and the defense is totally different. You're facing the guy head on. Are you ready? Are you ready? Yeah, I'm ready. You come out there and do it. There's no sucker punches and there's no lucky punches. There's just good, solid boxing.
Now,
So that doesn't happen in that sport. You hear this whole, well, he's got a puncher's chance. That is garbage in boxing. That does happen in MMA. You'll see guys where you go, hey, that guy's nowhere near the stand-up fighter, and he knocked the other guy out. Yeah, that is true with the 4-ounce glove. That is absolutely a fallacy when it comes to boxing.
Now, can you do me a favor? Since we just spent 15, 18 minutes talking about a fight that has not been signed yet, that you cannot place a wager on. There is some fights that you can place a wager on tomorrow. And it is DC versus Rumble. 2, Masasi versus Chris. 1. Let's talk about that, man. I'm actually ready to change my opinion.
On which one?
Which one do you think I'm gonna
Well, you've
switch?
been pretty set on AJ. I don't think you're going to go back on that. And then you give me a hard time that I never go against DC just because I picked him on. So I would say, so let's see, you took Musasi, I believe. I'm going to say you're going to switch on that one. You're going to take Weidman.
Yeah, I've got.
Am I right?
You're 100% right. We've talked about as adamant as we are both about Conor doesn't have a chance that sometime they're going to be able to sell me a different view. The DC Rumble, I'm not as sure no more. I'm not as sure as I've always been, but I'm staying with Rumble. But there's a big over bet. The over's 1.5 rounds. I'm going to take the over. I'm going to take Rumble and the over. And I'm also, where I'm going to switch on is you got me thinking, and then I watched some of the countdown or embedded that the UFC does. I'm going to go with Chris. I don't think Masasi would have to stop him. I don't think Masasi can stop Chris's takedowns. I think he's going to win the fight and he's going to control it.
That's a big thing. I think those takedowns are a big thing, and if Chris can get it, and he has to get it, it does change the fight. But Chris Weidman's defense is so greatly underrated. If you go back and you watch the Damian Maia fight, which he took on short notice, it's a pretty bad performance by Chris. He had a terrible weight cut, and he still went out and beat Damian Maia. It was a close fight, and Damian did his part, but that was a really hard fight, particularly in that point of Chris's career. But to the point, if you go back and you watch that, you go watch the punches that Damian Maia threw him. I don't want to hear about Damian's not a great striker. I don't want to hear any of that. Just go watch the punches he threw at Chris's face and watch how Chris slips them. You go watch the Lyoto Machida fight. Watch not only the punches, but some of those knees right to the body where Machida would just cripple a guy, just absolutely double him over. You go watch how Chris avoided those like a matador against a bull, and he just moves out of the way, and his hips are just always in the right spot, and his head slips. Chris Weidman's defense is so absolutely fantastic that even if they do end up on their feet for a little bit, it's not the one-sided battle people think it is. And is Musasi more likely to touch Chris than Chris is to him? Yeah, maybe. But Chris is going to get out of the way. He's going to get out of the way a lot. And I think Musasi had better be ready for that. And I think fans had better be ready for that. Because, people do not understand how good he is on his feet. Don't forget, Vitor Belfort blitzed him. On the same blitz that put everybody away and made Vitor Belfort a world champion. Chris covered up, took it, weathered the storm, and came right back. He's relevant.
Even though I'm taking Rumble, I'm staying on that pick. I will say this about DC. He might have been the best heavyweight for the last 3 or 4 years.
What?
He never lost at heavyweight. He went down because, Kane was that guy. And so we'll never know.
Yeah, he was coaching Kane, it was his teammate, but he was also coaching him. And he went down to make room so that match didn't have to happen. Yeah, I fully agree with you. He did great at heavyweight. Was that the only point you had on that? You just wanted to pat him on the heavyweight?
Sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. Hey guys, cutting weight is the single most overlooked aspect of combat sports training. I spent 25 years cutting weight and I've seen everything, including ridiculous methods that have ended careers. The Ultimate Weight Cut Guide. is the blueprint for safe and scientific weight cutting. Learn to calculate your target weight zone, how to run test cuts, and when changing weight classes is most important. Manage your meals with the diet and menu plans. We have specific sauna strategies and workouts, fight week nutrition strategies, eating on the road, and how to hydrate effectively without the use of IVs. If you are competing in wrestling, MMA, or jiu-jitsu, do not ignore your diet and especially your weight cut. This is a step-by-step guide to cutting weight and will help you step into the cage or onto the mat healthy, strong, and confident. Order the Ultimate Weight Cut Guide right now. Go to ultimateweightcut.com. Enter the promo code BADGUY and you will get 40% off. Until next time, for Joel, I'm Chael, and this is Beyond the Fight.
Presents Beyond the Fight.
What's up, guys? Welcome to Beyond the Fight. We got a lot of things going today. Before we get into it, this episode is brought to you by BetDSI.com. Guys, for any major world or sporting event, you can get action. You can place wagers at BetDSI.com. These guys have been around for over 20 years. They have built reputations on giving the best odds, and most importantly, you can get paid easy and quickly. These guys score an A+ on most sports review sites. Here's the deal for my listeners only. Go to BetDSI.com. You put up $50. They will match your $50. All you have to do is use the promo code BADGUY. One word, BADGUY, and there's more. They will email you a promo code. Take that promo code to badguyinc.com. Pick out any 2 t-shirts you want. They will buy them for you and ship them to you for free. There is no fine print. Your $50 and the promo code BADGUY gets you $50 and 2 t-shirts now. Got a big program for you. Joel and I are out here in New York City doing a little promotion for the pay-per-view coming up June 24th. Yours truly will finally be getting at it with Wanderlei Silva, Fedor, and Mitrione on the card. Without further ado, we actually have the ghost of Frank Sinatra has written a little ditty about the fight, about the big pay-per-view on June 24th. Without further ado, to the spirit, the spirit of Mr. Sinatra. Take it away.
How are you, Chael? How are things going today?
Things are all right.
I've got a little song I wrote for you. Hey, is that idiot Joel in the room?
Joel is here. You know, I thought I had this teed up pretty well. I've explained to the audience we have a song. Let's hear it.
Hey, Joel, I've only got 2 words for you. Shut up, stupid.
It's 3, dummy.
With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I've written a little song from the hereafter for the upcoming fight. Myself, little help from Paul Anka. Don Costa did the arrangement. Nelson Riddle in the orchestra. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen. New York, keeps a hell of a town. Chael Sonnen shoots and Wanderlei falls down. Shugel and Anderson are wearing frowns. New York, it's a hell of a town.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Do you got anything else for us?
Second verse, New York, it's a hell of a place. Wanderlei getting slugged in the face. 1 shoot left, just about to fall out, and I didn't run that because I've had too much to drink. Hey, cuckoo baby. Hey, Joel, shut up, stupid. That's 2 words.
3.
All right, there it was. Hey, I will admit, I'm not afraid to admit, Joel, when we have an idea that falls a little bit flat.
You know what?
I'm not afraid to say that perhaps.
Except, I'm laughing. When this happens on this side of the table, dude, the marbles are coming left and right. Left and right.
Hey, even Babe Ruth didn't hit a home run every time. All right, I thought I had a little something. I thought I had a little something special there.
I think shut up, dummy is 3 words.
So you steered into his joke. That's why it's funny. He says, I got 2 words for you. Shut up, dummy. That is the joke. That's why it's funny. And then you marked out and said, that's 3 words.
Okay,
He
well,
knows
then
it's 3 words. That's how that bit was written.
Okay, well then that's good. I've never heard it before.
All right.
But
So
it's
what do
still
we got?
3
So
words.
we got a big day.
We got RC, baby. We got RC coming on in a few minutes. Randy Couture. The fans have been asking for old Team Quest stories forever. Our boy's going to call in a few minutes, and we're going to have some fun. It's not going to be a podcast. It's not going to be all the bells and whistles. It's just going to be 3 bros. What do you call it? Shooting?
Shooting, talking. Well, if we record this and we release it through iTunes, it is a podcast. So but how do you like New York so far? Let's get into that. How are you enjoying the city, man?
Well, I'm on a diet, so it's pretty tough. It's the first time I've ever been here in my life, and I haven't been able to eat those gyros and those hot dogs and those hamburgers, but I'll be back in 96 days.
I tell you what, that's funny you bring that up because that's one of my takeaways as well from this city. I mean, forget about the buildings and the people and the hustle and the bustle, man. It's about the food. They got more food here, and those streetcars, I'm not on the diet that you're on. Those streetcars are making, I had the best Philly cheesesteak, out of one of those little carts in front of you, and the pizza as well. You're not getting in on the pizza gimmick.
I'm out on the whole thing,
Do you have
but
a
I
cheat
will be
day or
back.
something? Do you
Not
have some
here,
kind-
not this trip.
No meal on this trip whatsoever. What about tomorrow in Kankakee?
No, 96, 94 days.
How many days are you into this diet?
A minute.
But how? I think you started Monday. So you start Monday of last week.
9 days?
Okay, yeah. So Monday was Monday of last week. That's right. All right. Well, good job. Good focus, good discipline. It's those first 3 days are the hardest. Once you get those down, you can kind of smooth sail a little bit, and then your next checkpoint really isn't until 30 days. Those first 72 hours are the hardest, and then once you get 30 days, it's like anything. Now you've got to have it.
I will tell you what. A guy could get in a fist fight every 5 minutes out here. I mean, everybody's mouthing off to everybody. I'm like, whoa, what's going on?
Well, they got this horn gimmick out here. Everybody wants to honk their horn. And yeah, in my hometown, you'll go 2-3 years without ever hearing a car horn. Out here, they just tap, but they don't mean anything by it. They don't mean, hey, screw you, get out of the maid, let's jump out of the car. They're in the habit of honking the horn. I have no idea where this habit came from.
There's a lot of humans here, too. There's tons of humans. This must be a really populated space.
Yeah, it would appear as such. Is this your first time?
I just said that. You knew that?
I didn't know that. Did you just say that? I'm sorry, I didn't listen. You said that it's my first time in New York?
Yeah, on the plane 20 times before we got here, 15 times since we've been here, 5 times during the show.
Well, you're such a traveler. You've been around. I mean, I know you've been in New Jersey. I was in Connecticut myself with you, which is right next door. You could get to the ESPN studio in about 2.5 hours. That's with traffic. You could probably do it in just under 2, maybe with a little bit speeding, but late at night with no traffic. So the point that I'm getting at is I know you've been very close, but I didn't realize you literally never set foot in New York. It is a different city, and it's not for everybody. It's not for me. It's not my kind of town. I don't like the hustle bustle. I don't like the horns. I don't like the way they're all yelling at one another. But it is fun that 24 hours a day you can walk. There's something going on. I mean, the only other place I've been to that's like that, where there are 24 hours a day, you could go get something to eat. My town, no, man, we close down. Everybody goes to sleep.
Dude.
The only other town I could compare that to is Vegas, where it just goes nonstop. But it is nonstop in New York. I've been having a hard time sleeping. Maybe my energy is a little bit high, but I'm faking it. And the reason I'm having trouble sleeping is those horns don't stop, man. They just keep honking those horns. And without further ado, let's just get to the main attraction. The champ is here, Randy Couture. Randy, what's going on, man?
Hey, how are you, bud?
Hey, I'm doing good. We were on the show last week when we announced that you were coming on. Joel put out an open invitation to the fans that said, hey, you guys steer the ship. Write us some questions that you've always wanted to ask Randy. It was overwhelming in how many questions came in. We're not going to be able to get to all of them, but the Godfather has gone through his favorites here. Let's get right into it.
Well, mostly what they've asked for, Rock, is they've been asking for this forever, is the old Team Quest stories, and they do have some good ones, champ. Now, I do want to mention to the people that may have missed the legend of Rock Couture. We're talking to a three-time heavyweight champ, 2-time light heavyweight champ, went back to the heavyweight after winning 2 lightweight titles, and they say somebody's a better fighter in the history of the world than you, not me, Daddy. Hey, did you know this, bro? I did the math, between 2000, shut up, Jail. Between November 2000 and November 2008, you fought 15 out of 16 title fights, and I think you were out for a year and a half during that time.
Yeah, I think I was going through the shenanigans with the ex and stepped out for a year and a half. No, I didn't know that. And I'm not big on, I don't keep track of those kinds of statistics, but
lame.
It's interesting.
The reason I mention it is they were all 5-round fights. Not so much the title fights. They were all 5-round fights, and I watched them all. Hey, buddy, here, I got some questions that I don't know.
Okay.
All right, so when we rolled the mats out, when Franklin called me and said, hey, Randy needs a place to train, there's mats at the Gresham High School, let's roll them out in the back. Where were you?
We were, at that time, Danny and I had been running the 3rd Street Gym, which became Performance Quest, and we had thrown wrestling mats in the aerobics room and turned that into a wrestling room. The downside to that was the walls were all covered with mirrors. You can imagine what those mirrors looked like after a couple of wrestling practices in there. But Dan and I quickly realized, after throwing money at that thing for a year, that we had no idea how to run a gym. The only part that grew was the wrestling and MMA classes that we were teaching in that aerobics room. And that's when Linlin came on board. You guys fired up USA Auto. Danny and I decided to quit throwing money at Performance Quest and close it down and auction off all the equipment and try and get some of our money back and pay the back rent we owed. And kind of things shifted from Performance Quest over on 3rd Street to the back of USA Auto.
Hey, brother, what I meant was when Franklin made the call to me when I'm sitting in my office and said, we got mats at Gresham High School, Randy needs a place to train. Where were you? I mean, physically, that day.
Physically, I don't have any idea.
Because
I might have been, I don't know the timing of that call. I know we'd had several discussions with Franklin because obviously Frank and Franklin were partners in the property at the 3rd Street Gym, what became Performance Training Center.
But you do remember going and grabbing those mats, throwing them on that cold barn. What would you call the back bay of the dealership at that time?
I call it the Quonset hut. It was kind of looked like a Quonset hut. It was an old van conversion center. We used to put vans back there and put those camper shells and stuff on them, and obviously you guys weren't using that part of the car dealership, so the space was open. But yeah, it was damp and cold and nasty. We cleaned it up the best we could, and eventually we put some styrofoam sheets down under the mats to give us a little insulation and a little more padding, because the cement just came through those mats, so it was horrible.
It wasn't eventually, it was the same day, bro. Lauschie foot swept me. As soon as we had, the only takedown Chris Lauschie ever got on me in my life was that day. He opened those big steel doors, ran in, was like, oh, this is cool, grabs me in an underhook and foot sweeps me, about breaks my back. I immediately go buy that foam, and I remember calling you halfway through and say, you need to pay for the rest of this, bro. My question is, do you think that foam is still underneath those mats?
Oh yeah, I think it's definitely still there.
Hey, Randy, did you follow this year's NCAA wrestling tournament?
I did. I went for the first 2 days, and then I had to leave for New York for the World Series of Fighting. They hired me for a couple of shows to commentate and do some color for them, so I didn't get to stay for the semis and the finals, but I did follow the tournament.
So you read about it. I mean, Oklahoma State, they were ranked number 1 all year. I know they lost that just prior to the postseason. You're a former Cowboy yourself. Did that surprise you? Did that surprise you that Penn State cleaned up that much, particularly without having, their 125-pounder present?
Well, there were a lot of questions, and everybody knew it was going to be a horse race. That Ohio State had a very solid team and had done well in the Big 12s. Also, Mizzou had a great showing in it, and with Jaden Cox and several athletes on their team that were strong. We knew it was going to be a closer race this year than it had been, but everybody felt like the Cowboys going in with 10 and having dominated their conference in devastating. I mean, literally the top 3 teams added together didn't come up to the Cowboys' score in the conference championship. And I get so confused now because it used to be the Big 8 and the Big 10, and now I think they're both the Big 12 and I don't even know what they are. But so we felt like we had a good shot going into the tournament with 10 guys present. Pretty seasoned team. And boy, they got hammered in the quarters. That was the round that a bunch of those guys fell off. They lost matches. Where I was hopeful that other strong programs like Mizzou and Ohio State were going to knock off some of those Penn State guys. It went the other way around. A bunch of the Cowboys got knocked off that round. I think we only had one that advanced to the semis, and it was a pretty rough round. And you know, we still had 5 guys on the backside. That's a rough road.
Yeah, well, and even if you look at where college wrestling is at right now, you know, I can remember the time that Oregon State was second in the country, and I can't remember how many All-Americans you guys had, but I wanted to say it was 3 All-Americans. And now you look at a team like...
We had 4. I think we had 4 All-Americans that year. We took 4th the year before and then came back strong and took 2nd under the first national championship with Les Gutches. I think it was his 1st or 2nd. I can't remember. He won it twice. But, you know, we had the Radke twins. We had Babak Mohammadi, Dan Aylar. I mean, we had just an amazing group of guys.
And when you look at the landscape of wrestling today, you look at Mizzou. They got 3 finalists. They have a champ. They have 5 All-Americans. And all that 3 finalists and 5 All-Americans lands you in 5th place. I mean, that's pretty surprising if you were to look at former history books of wrestling.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. It's pretty amazing. He always reminds me when I go and watch the tournament what a meat grinder that tournament is. 3 days of making weight, 3 days of wrestling. Just to stay on the front side and get into the finals is 4 matches in 2 days. And then you have your 5th match on the 3rd day, and it's the national championship. So it is a crazy, tough tournament, and I don't think the average fan understands how athletically demanding that is.
Kyle Schneider of today versus Les Gutches 1995. Say they weigh the same weight. Who wins that match?
Well, that's a big say. Honestly, Kyle's amazing. To have him win a world championship, an Olympic championship, and 2 NCAA titles in the course of 2 years is pretty remarkable.
And he's got a year left.
It's incredible. He's fun to watch. The average heavyweight just cannot deal with his speed and that level change. His ability to get in deep and finish takedowns is just devastating for a lot of those guys in the heavyweight division. Les was, you know, a different animal at 177. I never saw a more put together, complete package guy that studied tape, monitored his diet. I mean, he had his own little Rubbermaid bin that he took on every trip that cooked his own food because he wouldn't eat the crap we got in restaurants a lot. And just the guys I've ever been around.
All right, brother, let me get you some fan questions. This is from Barry Holkamp. I like this. And I wrote down my own answers for these questions. We'll see how close I'll come. Who was the one guy at Team Quest that you were least excited to roll with and spar with?
Oh, that's a pretty easy question to answer. It was Matt Lindland. Matt Lindland, first of all, was coming right off the farm every day to practice, so he smelled like a gun.
Yes, he did.
Second of all, he's a junkyard dog. He's all sinew and bone. It didn't matter what you did to him, you were probably hurting yourself in the process of doing it. He was the on-wrist and just everything on Matt hurt. The elbows, the hips, it didn't matter what it was.
Yeah, well, I got that one right. Now staying on that point, me and Chael talked about this on the show plenty of times, and I'm like, you remember when it was just the 4 of you, there was 3 of you in there, and then people from Washington or Bend, or people would just show up. 5 people, 6 people would show up for practice, and the first thing that you did, you would always put the wood to who you eyeballed was the toughest in that group, and then during that time, if somebody had got the best of somebody else or they went too hard, you would always grab them and put the wood to them. Now, Chael says that you were just putting the pace on them. I say that you were just showing them whose house it was.
Well, I think there's an etiquette to coming into the gym, and we certainly got our share of guys that would drop in that were trying to prove something, that drug their ego in there and wanted to show how tough they were and how hard they could hit, and that's never really good for anybody. And I think you had to regulate some of that crap. I mean, we had guys that would come in literally trying to knock you out in sparring sessions, and it's just not. It's not good. It's not a healthy situation.
Yeah,
it turned out to not be too healthy for them on most occasions.
You know, I mentioned that because one of the guys that was usually putting the wood to somebody else was Mr. Limlin, and sometimes you had to grab him second and put the wood to him. And I started thinking about it, and I was like, yeah, but he never knew there was anything going on. He just thought he was going. He had no idea.
That was another day for Matt. Yeah, Matt, obviously the Scott Smith story comes to mind when you're talking about Matt getting carried away, and he was always like a kid with a new toy. He just wanted to play with it, and obviously he played with it till it broke.
Okay, here's another good one. I've got another answer for this. So the first, you answer this two ways. A, with you in the picture. B, with you out of the picture. So with you in the picture, all the guys, Team Quest, all the guys at the gym, including you, get in an all-out brawl. Not a fight to the death, but close. Who wins?
Fighting each other?
Yep, just all hell breaks loose back there.
Oh, man. That's almost an impossible question to answer. I mean, we had such an amazing room back then. And I mean, we can go down the list, but it's a stupid room of guys. It's amazing. I don't know. I don't think you can conceivably answer that question realistically.
If it's my answer, if it's not a fight to the death, sooner or later Lindland will still be there, and everybody will be like, "Yeah, I'm good. I'm good."
Oh, come on.
That's fairly accurate. Yeah, there was just no quitting that guy. Didn't matter what was going on.
All right, another question from Mike Scarfini out of New York is, do you still spar?
I don't do a lot of sparring anymore. I've done this year, did some work with my son Ryan and did some work with Bamba out at Unbreakable. But that's about the only sparring I've done. Like the discs in my neck at C4 and C5 are all but gone, so sparring just doesn't make a lot of sense for me right now. I don't really want to have a neck surgery, to be honest. And if I continue to, put that kind of pressure and strain on those neck discs, that's probably where I'm headed.
All right, cool. Here's my last question for you, brother. So you pick me up my 40th birthday. We go to sushi. On the way to sushi, I'm raining on you. You need to come back and fight the giant.
You've been raining on me for 6 months via text.
That's true.
Before that night.
Well, I mean, in fairness, I watched you never lose, not let alone a round, a minute to the guy in the back of the dealership. So you text Dana, you say, hey, I want to come back and fight for I want my title back, the heavyweight title. He asks if you're drinking tea. You say no. You drop me off and you call me a week later, maybe 10 days later, and tell me that fight has been made. When you went home, did you go back and forth when did the fight really get made after that dinner?
Do you remember what happened? We said in that text sitting at I Love Sushi in Vegas for your birthday. I texted him kind of poking fun at the Orlovsky. Actually, I think it was our boy from Washington and Tim Sylvia that had just fought in the Sacramento, the first show at Arco Arena. Munson and Sylvia had just happened, and it was like watching grass grow. It was just a terribly boring endeavor. I was commentating for that fight, and we were talking about that, and you were poking me about fighting the giant, so I texted Dana, and Dana didn't text me back. He called me.
That's right.
He called me on the phone and said, "Are you serious? We can make that happen." And I was shocked that he didn't text back, he just called. And so, literally within 10 days, the fight was set. But it started right there, drinking sake with you.
Yeah, that one worked out well. I do have one more, and then Chill's got some for you. This is from Ben Briz of Hungary. Advice for a European fighter that wants to get to the top of MMA.
I think and we're talking about Team Quest and the Team Quest days. I think the thing that sharpened so many of those guys that came out of the room is finding that team, finding that group of guys. And I know there are some hot spots and some pockets of really quality competitors and good coaching and all those things in Europe. But finding one of those places where you can grow, where you're going to be challenged, but at the same time taken care of, not, like I said, not having guys in there trying to hurt you or knock your ass out is important. And I believe that iron sharpens iron. You got to be around guys that are going to make you better. And so finding that spot, I'm not sure if there's a spot like that in Hungary where you live. You might have to relocate. I know we've got, we just saw Ivanov from Bulgaria that trains with us, defend his title at World Series of Fighting. If you can't find it in Europe, you might have to look at coming to the States, and Extreme Couture is a pretty good place to train. So, but finding that team, that's the most important thing.
Awesome. Hey, Randy, you got anything else you want to get off your chest?
I just want to ask Joel, how is Lad, and how is my favorite East Morgan?
Well, Lad's amazing. Can't wait till you guys see each other again. He's all grown up, man. He's out of it. You called it perfect the whole time. He was going to be just fine, and he is just fine. And thanks for asking about Morgan. She's doing real well. She'll like to hear that. Thank you so much.
You bet, man.
Randy, thanks for the time, buddy.
You bet. You guys have a great day.
All right, see you, Randy. All right, there's a natural right there. We had some questions. I liked what he said. I thought his passion really came through as soon as we started talking NCAA wrestling. He said he was there for the first couple of days, had to go out to commentate the show. That doesn't surprise me. He usually does try to go out. But that is his first love, and a lot of people forget it. I could hear the tone change. I know you had those fan questions, so I let it go so we could get those fans' questions instead of my own. But I could have grilled him on that for a while. The way the landscape has changed, and really, what I wanted to ask him, Joel, is, Brandon, what do you think needs to change for anybody to catch Penn State? Because they are so young. In addition to their level of success, they're so young. I mean, just those 5 hammers that won it this year, they all come back next year.
Well, they've got some wood in the barn. You make an interesting point. We did the NCAA show last week, and a lot of people were like, God, you guys love wrestling. I wish you were talking about MMA or something else. And I'm like, yeah, we love wrestling. We would talk about it all day, every day, if we could. And I think the greats of the sport and we were wrestlers. So, and did you see, he said our team. That is his team. He's an Oklahoma State guy.
Sure.
That is his team. To answer your question, how do they catch up, man? I don't know. That's a big road to climb.
Yeah, nobody knows. There is no right answer to it. But for a guy like Randy, who's been there, who's done that, who's coached at the Division I level, now coaches at the top of MMA, he would have been a great guy to ask, and he would have had an opinion. I imagine it would have been something very simple. And it probably would have been, hey, they got to get the right recruits. I don't know that it's about building these environments and getting the funding and bringing in the right coaching. I do argue that the athletes make the program doesn't make the athletes, and that Penn State, better than anybody, has the right guys.
Well, I'll tell you something about Randy, and again, it's not about wrestling, but it's a little bit off track, and it's something that you kind of just went through, and you told me about it, and I was like, man, that reminded me of Randy, is when he fought Nogueira out here in Portland, him and, what was he had a killer coach. I forgot his name. He was
his Muay Thai coach.
Yes.
Or Neil Melanson. I don't know. I know who the guy is. I can't produce his name.
Okay,
Randy only had him for a minute.
We had him for a couple fights, but he was a great guy. Anyway, Randy shows up and does. I pick him up at the airport at 9 o'clock. He goes to from 9 till, and you've done these before, from 9 till 7 o'clock tonight. He's doing public appearance after public appearance, radio show, this, that, and the other. And he was dead dog tired, and him and Quentin, his name was Quentin, went in the lobby, and I got to be a dummy for 45 minutes after he did mitts and this, that, and the other, and he got through it, and he told me, he said, when you need to work out the most is when you don't want to work out the most. And you had something the night before we got here, and you explained it. I'd like you to talk about that, because that can help a lot of people just get into the gym. The way you explained that to me, I was like, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, well, real simple. You asked me how practice was. I said it was great, and I never tell you practice was great. There's always critiques and struggles, and I wish this would have gone better. You said, I remember you looked at me and said, why was it great? And I said, Joel, you have no idea how much I didn't want to go. I did not want to go to practice that day. And that's usually a mental battle that you face every day on some level, and you just get through it. But I was at a different point. I mean, I was like in a fog. I just kind of felt, emotionally or physically, however, just got a little bit of a haze where I just wanted to crawl up and go to bed and just see if I could sleep it off and wake up feeling a little bit better. And I was finally to the point where I had made the decision, I am not going to go to practice. Now, I always go to practice. I'm very disciplined about that. Even when I don't want to, I go. My effort is different on certain days, but I show up. I was to the point, and I can't remember having this. I can't remember in 30 years of going to practices of hey, I'm not going. And so that's where I was. I had made the decision I was not going to go, and oh man, the guilt sets in. You start to feel bad about yourself, and that starts to get even worse. So I got in the car and I want to see how many steps can I make? Can I get to the car? Yeah, I got to the car with my workout clothes. Okay. Can I start the car and get out of this driveway? And then pretty soon I'm on the freeway. Can I get one exit from my house closer to the gym? Yeah, okay, I made that. Can I get to the next exit? But this is how much I didn't want to go, and I can't really now. It all seems so long ago now, and it's only 48 hours ago. But this is where I was. I couldn't do it. I thought, okay, can I physically get to the parking lot of the gym? Because in my life, I've never got to practice and then driven home. Boom, next thing I know, I'm in the parking lot. Okay, can I walk inside and change my clothes? But that's just where I was, and I had to break it down in these little tiny steps. And it's that old expression, how does a goldfish eat a shark? A lot of little bites. And I just had to keep taking these little bites. Okay, can I put my gear on and get on the mat? Can I just get through the warm-up? If I want to throw the towel in after the warm-up, I give myself permission. But look, can we do the warm-up? Then before you know it, the warm-up's done, and then all of a sudden you're getting into technique. All of a sudden technique's done, and you're starting your live rounds, and the practice is done. And then you feel great about yourself. So when you ask me, hey, how was the workout? That's why I said it was so good, is because it was such an accomplishment for whatever was going on with my body and mind, that whatever I